Hello everybody, pips. We're only 2 minutes late because technology, the tormentors, nothing wanted to work.
God.
It's working now,
This is
so
yours.
that's mine. And I'm just going to try and chill.
Well, that was fun.
Not. So how's your day been?
Oh, well, anyway. Chapter 3.
Is that where we're up to? Goodness
That's where
gracious
bookmark
me.
is. Next morning, the fog had cleared away and spring was in the air. At the hospital, they found their formidable physician singularly vernal,
Well, how nice.
which surprised no one more than himself, for no one knew better than he did the kind of wreckage left behind by such storms as that of the preceding night. He felt well disposed towards the whole world. He was glad to give the students a helping hand, explaining to them instead of cursing them for not knowing what they had come to learn.
What happened to him?
He even achieved a kind of grim geniality towards patients.
Geniality? No, surely not him.
The old boy's fallen in love was the perspicacious.
Where were you? Perspicacious comment.
Where does she find these
I don't know.
words?
She makes them up, I think.
Perspicacious comment of the students. Little did they know how far from falling in love was the Dr. Rupert Malcolm. That the lady in the case had turned him out of her house like a stray dog, and that he had resolved to cut her out of his life and thoughts forever.
Dun dun dun.
Nevertheless, she was there. She was there like a kind of running accompaniment to all that he did. He had not seen her face, so his imagination had free rein. Being himself a fair-skinned man, he naturally idealized her as a brunette. Not a lissom young girl. He could even see, through the veiling cloak, that she was not that, and in any case, he, a hard-bitten man of 45, had nothing in common with young girls, but a woman in the maturity of her beauty, which is quite a different thing from a girlish charm. He tried to call to mind pictures that might have resembled her, memories of his abortive visit to the National Gallery, and determining to go there again and see if he could find a picture that would represent her to him. So he felt that only among the work of the old masters would he find her. She was too dynamic and natural for society beauty, too sophisticated and cultured for a professionalism of a studio. But even as the idea rose in rapid succession in his mind, her image came clear of its own accord, and he saw her face as a rather long, pale oval framed in blackness. Her eyes were dark and almond shape, her nose slightly aquiline, her mouth scarlet-lipped after the modern fashion. Her eyes gazed at him steadily, velvety brown, gentle and inscrutable. He could not tell what she was thinking. He could not fantasy how he would picture the personality behind those eyes. She remained aloof with her inner life concealed, and yet there was about her a kindness that was infinitely comforting to the lonely man.
Oh dear, oh dear. He's not obsessed at all, is he, really?
Hi, Wendy. Hi, Shauna.
So, he had, though his colleagues would never have believed it, an odd taste for martyrdom hidden deep in his heart. He could never feel justified to his own conscience, unless he were overdriving himself, denying himself minor luxuries, doing acts of impersonal service which he neither expected nor received any thanks. As a young man, his choice had fallen on a helpless, clinging little bit of prettiness whom he could cherish and protect. And now that he was an older man and beginning to get a little weary, a change had come over the spirit of his dream. He still wanted to make a martyr of himself, but he no longer desired to go pricking across the plain looking for dragons. He no longer wanted a clinging maiden in distress to minister to the ideal of manhood he was trying to realize. He wanted to be martyred after another manner. He wanted to find himself in the hands of a possessive woman who would make demands on him.
Oh.
He was tired of martyring himself. The satisfaction this afforded had begun to pall since he had been disillusioned with regard to his wife's need of him. He shrank from the pain of presenting any more unacceptable sacrifices. He wanted to know exactly what was required in the way of burnt offerings before he laid himself on the altar again. And because of this, and the sense of latent and aloof strength in his dream woman appealed to him, if such a woman as that made demands on him, he would pour out his life like wine for her. Most men would hate her for being an ever unconquerable fortress, but she delighted him. Viewed from this angle, he decided that there was no reason why he should not daydream about her as much as he liked.
Other than the fact that she kicked him out of her house the night before.
Well, there is that small point. Protection order, anybody? There was no disloyalty to his marriage vows in such a spirit of service. He must cut out the woman in the Cape and embankment walks. That was quite certain. But the dream was another matter. That harmed nobody and helped him beyond all reason or belief. In his feeling for her, there was nothing of sex or sensuality. She was just a dream woman, an ideal that in some inexplicable way calmed him and soothed him and met his emotional need of a woman, not his physical one. It seemed to him, provided this aspect was kept out of it and never allowed to debase either of them, that there was no harm in him enjoying an imagined companionship. It was the first concession he ever made to any human weakness in himself in all his hard-driven life, and once made, he found himself revelling in it. He was in no mood to contend. With the underground at the end of the day's work, and he made them phone for a taxi. So there.
Alrighty.
Took a taxi.
The traffic holds up in the narrow street of the city area did not exasperate him, for she was beside him, occupying the other seat in the darkness of the cab's unlit interior. He could feel the warmth of her atmosphere enwrapping him like a kind of glow. He thought he could smell some of that aromatic kind of scent. He turned to her. "I'm very happy to be here with you. To be with you here," he said. "I think it a great privilege. I appreciate it." The sound of his own voice broke the spell, and he knew that the seat next to him was unoccupied. There was no one there, even to the eyes of the imagination. Yet despite the disillusion, the sense of happiness remained within him.
He's gone quite mad.
He waited quite contently in the darkness, with the sound of the car's engines and the traffic block all around him and the fumes of the exhaust coming in the window. As he waited, he felt his dream woman gradually built up at his side again. He knew better this time than to break the magic, and made no attempt to turn his head to see her, for he knew she wasn't there. Yet at the same, she was there, but in another dimension. She was there to the eyes of the imagination, and he could feel an emotional response. He was happy with her. That was all that mattered. She was real to him.
Well,
during the boring remarks of the chairman before he read his paper, he called her up before him, and she came. She did not come with the same vividness that she had possessed when she appeared spontaneously, but nevertheless she came. On his way back in the taxi through the empty streets, she came again, spontaneously, and he found her beside him before he realized her presence. She was tremendously real. He could almost hear the sound of her breathing in the dark. He could definitely smell the aromatic scent she used, and it went to his head like alcohol and set all his pulses throbbing. He hesitated for a moment. After all, lots of fellows carried on like anything in taxis, and he did not propose to do anything desperate. He leant over and put his head where the shoulder of the imaginary woman should be, and in doing so broke the spell. He sat up, cursed savagely, feeling as if he had been thoroughly well snubbed, and stared fiercely out the window for the rest of the journey. As he turned away after paying the taxi driver, he glanced back into the cab with sudden compunction, and his abandoned companion, feeling that he had been a brute and possibly hurt her feelings. And as he did so, a face rose before him like moonlight in the darkness, and he saw an oval contour, dark, steady eyes, and crimson lipped held mouth. It was so clear that for a moment he almost thought he saw it with his physical eyes, and only the knowledge that such a sight was impossible in the darkness prevented him from looking for the actual woman.
I think he's gone quite barking mad, to be perfectly
Well,
honest.
these books are really strange.
This is. I can see why she made several starts at this.
I had read this before, but like
it's
40 years ago.
It's a bit odd.
It is
It's a bit odd.
They're all odd, but it's cool.
Anyway, up in his sitting room, he stood with his elbow on the mantelpiece beside the dying fire and called her again. And she came again. He saw nothing, but he felt her presence and knew that particular spot in the room where she stood. As he turned over in bed after putting out the light, he punched up the pillow into a configuration it had the night before, and lay tense and still, waiting. Would she let him, or would she not? But nothing happened, and he felt himself gradually sliding off to sleep with the normal channels. And then, as he began to pass over the threshold, he felt the softness of a woman's breast beneath his cheek, and the rise and fall of her breathing.
Oh my.
His first instinct was to put out his hand and touch her, but he had learned his lesson and knew better than to break the illusion by trying to reduce it to actuality. He could only enjoy so long as he never tried to possess. He lay still, tense, hardly daring to breathe, so sweet and real was the illusion. He wondered whether in his imagination he dared turn and kiss her, but decided not to risk it. The experience was too precious as it was.
What was this? There's nothing sexual or alluring, and now he wants to kiss her.
I think she had some
repressed issues.
I think she did. Truth be told. Truth be told. Yes, but he decided not to risk it. The experience was too precious as it was. Then deep sleep took him, and he slept without stirring till morning, and awoke alert and alive and happy as a lad. He had a sudden twinge of conscience regarding his responsibilities at the seaside villa, but dismissed it as quixotic. What he was doing was harming no one, and the blessing and peace of it all was such a great boon. He had tried cutting it off drastically once, and the result had been an explosion of emotion he had no mind to precipitate again. What earthly need was there to give up his dream woman who harmed nobody and helped him so tremendously? He stood for a moment looking out of the window in the direction of the church across the water, veiled from his eyes at that hour by the morning mists, and suddenly, beyond all control, a cry burst from him. "My God, why can't you take that from me? Even that from me?" I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm not sure what that means. The reaction of this sudden uprush of emotion was so great that he found himself clutching the window sash, holding on by it, shaking and rattling as if it were in a gale. Lurching across the room, he dropped into his chair and buried his face in the frowsy cushion. What's frowsy? I've never heard that word before. Frowsy.
"No," he muttered. "That is too much. I won't agree to it." He had thought that he had long since outgrown the superstition of religion, but the hybrid form of jealous Jehovah gentle Jesus that had been impressed upon him in his childhood rose before his eyes, half idol, half angel. He hated the idol, but the angel aspect pulled at him painfully. He found himself on the verge of tears, horribly childish. That broke the spell. What? Raging at himself as he had never raged at the most stupid student, he wrenched off his collar and tie and plunged his face in a basin of cold water, toweled his head till it looked like the quickset hedge, then forced the collar back onto its studs, swearing like a trooper as he tied his tie as if it was the garroting object of the lifelong vendetta. And he tore at his hair with a comb, caught up his dispatch case without examining its contents, and arrived for the first time in the hospital history late for his lecture.
Oh my golly gosh.
His lecture and the following clinic were just plain hell for all concerned. He got through his private cases that afternoon in his Wimpole Street rooms in much the same manner as his clinic. But as patients were always warned what to expect by the doctor sending them, nothing very outward occurred. One lady collapsed in hysterics, and 2 children howled in dismay, but except for the minor contracepts to all outward appearances, business was as usual. Dr. Malcolm had one of those faces that could be hit with an axe without making an impression on it, and his receptionist, a
superannuated hospital sister. Superannuated?
superannuated.
I mean, that's probably been there many years.
Superannuated hospital sister certainly suspected nothing beyond an unusually irritable temper. Finally, towards 7 o'clock, the last patient on his list having been dispatched into the outer darkness, looking rather like a lost soul fleeing from the wrath of the Lord Dr. Malcolm, he tied up his stethoscope in a knot, flung it into his dispatch case, and pitched his delicate
Ophthalmoscope. Ophthalmoscope. It's what you look into people's eyes with.
Ophtho, I get it. Okay. Threw that in after it. But before he could get the lid shut, the door opened, revealing a shriveling face of the sister. "Well, what is it?" he snarled, looking as if he wanted to hurl the entire case at her head. "There is another patient in the waiting room, sir. A lady who rang up during the afternoon and made an appointment." "My God!" he exclaimed in disgust, seeing his release deferred, and already bone-weary and sick at heart. "All right, send her in." He released the lid of his dispatch case, but before he could get out his instruments again, the stethoscope uncurled itself and came writhing out like a snake and escaped to the floor. He stooped to grope for it, the effort seeming to add the last straw to his weariness and irritability. And as he straightened himself up, he saw coming through the door the woman in the cape.
Oh my golly gosh. She's actually appeared.
Wow.
He stood and looked at her. This is an hallucination, was his first thought. There she was, just as he had pictured her, wearing her flowing black cloak and wide black hat, like Sandeman's port. Okay.
Sounds like a witch to me.
There was all her pale oval face, her aquiline nose, her scarlet lips, and above all, her velvety brown eyes with the kindness in them. For 1 second, as he saw the kindness in the eyes, a lump came in Malcolm's throat, as it had come that morning, and immediately, as before, his mood turned to fury. A livid, concentrated fury, which he would not have believed himself capable of towards a woman. She must have identified his face, seen in the light of her electric torch.
Perhaps she's sick.
For some photo or others in the papers, and had hunted him out, intending to blackmail him. Or was she seeking adventure? He never thought of such a thing before in connection with himself, and to his horror he felt the regenerate man within him thrill with faint, furtive triumph, and his temper, if that were possible, worsened accordingly. "Good afternoon," he snapped in a harsh, strident voice.
7 p.m. at night? Afternoon?
"Yes, I have not had the pleasure of knowing your name, nor who sent you." "My name is Morgan.
Oh.
Miss LeFay Morgan.
Oh, here we go.
My dentist told me of you, but he did not send me to you. I came of my own accord, because I thought you might be able to explain to me certain things I want to know." "That is a very unusual method of approaching a consultant," said Dr. Malcolm, glaring at her hostilely. Goodness gracious me. And yet, with a dreadful kind of numb aching inside him, as if she resembled some one dead who was dear to him. "Mine is a very unusual case," replied his visitor, quite unperturbed by his uncontrolled resentment of her presence. "May I tell you about it? And then perhaps you will know whether you can help me or not." Yes, certainly. Won't you sit down?" said the man, pulling himself together. His ingrained rough chivalry refused to allow him to do anything worse than snarl at a woman. She seated herself in the patient's chair with a swirl of her flowing cloak, and he, feeling more dead than alive, dropped into his own seat and tried to concentrate on the consultation. "What is it you complain of?" he asked. The brown eyes, calm and veiled, gazed back into his own grey-green ones, and there was no kindness in them now. They were like a duellist's in the motionless moment preceding the commencement of a bout. He liked her better for that, and relaxed slightly in relief. It was the kindness in her eyes that he could not stand, because it made him feel his own weakness.
I have, she paused, picking her words carefully, sensations, impressions that cannot be accounted for by ordinary explanation. I'm anxious to know whether they are hallucinations or whether they are of genuine cause. What is it you experienced? Tactile, visual, auditory sensations? Visual frequently, but that is nothing new to me, for I have had vivid imagination. But several times recently I have had a tactile sensation, and finally this morning an auditory one, which was what caused me to come to you. The others I should have ignored, putting them down as subconscious fantasies, but this morning, went beyond what I am prepared to ignore. It sounds to me as if your case were one for a psychologist, madam, not for me. I'm a neurologist. I want to know whether there is any physical basis for my sensations, said the woman, never taking her eyes off him. No, I should say there isn't. Can you tell that for certain without examining me? He winced at this home thrust. Do you want me to examine you now? I should like your considered opinion, Dr. Malcolm. Very well. We will take the tactile sensation first. What is it that you actually feel? I have on several occasions been wakened from sleep by a sense of pressure on my shoulder or chest, and 2 occasions by a sensation of a pair of powerful hands gripping my upper arms. You ought to have your heart examined, Malcolm managed to say, clinging to his medical science like a drowning man to a straw. Are you all right?
And
refusing
weird.
to allow
it's
his
just
mind
weird.
to swerve its concentration to the central nervous system of the patient before him, though his own heart was pounding like a trip hammer and threatening to suffocate him. Do you think it's necessary? Asked the woman in front of him, watching him with her unflattering gaze. Malcolm couldn't speak. He could only sit and look at her. Have you ever made any investigation in psychic research? He shook his head. You ought to read this book, she said. And taking a substantial volume from under her cloak, she pushed it towards him across the desk. For the first time since the interview had started, her eyes released his, and he bent his head to read the title, Phantasms of the Living, by Gurney and Podmore.
Phantasms of the Living? I wonder if that's a real book. Probably not. The man sat with his head...
Maybe Dion Fortune wrote that too.
It's possible. She took on 2 names in that case, Gurney and Podmore. The man sat with his head bowed over the book so long that his visitor began to think that, little as she wished to, she would have to break the silence. Suddenly he lifted his head and gazed straight at her. I can only say, I am sorry. I have never dreamt such a thing was possible. He bowed his head over the book again, bending so low that she could no longer see his face at all, but only his thick, greying red hair. It shall never happen again, you have my word for that, he said in a voice she could hardly hear. Then he sat bolt upright and looked at her. As if even murder looked out of a man's eyes, it looked out for his, for it seemed to him that the mangled body of his dream lady lay dead between this woman's hands. Then, as he saw her likeness to his beloved, he weakened. It was as if she reminded him of the dead. He could not hate this woman who was so like the one he loved. He wavered for a moment, fighting off his self-control.
This is the strangest...
Isn't it?
Chapter.
And then put his elbows on the desk and covered his face with his hands. I'd be glad if you go, he said almost inaudibly. He heard her rise and her footsteps on the parquet, and thought she was quitting the room, but instead he felt a hand on his shoulder. He shuddered and drove his fingernails into the skin of his forehead, but except for that he gave no sign. She stood quietly beside him for a few moments, and the blood began to pound in his temples till he thought his eyeballs would burst as he pressed his hands savagely against them, trying to shut out thought as well as sight. He was numb, as man became numb in a heavy bombardment, and at the same time he was one bare nerve of agony. He could not move. He knew his self-control would break down if he tried to speak, and he could only sit still and endure and wait for her to go. He heard her voice speaking to him, a rich, low contralto, velvety like her eyes, and it moved him as great music had never moved him. It was like bells tolling for the dead. He could not feel his self-control beginning to slip. If she played on his emotions any more, he would cry out as men cried out on the examination couch when they came to the end of their fortitude. "You said that it should never happen again," he heard her say. He nodded his head slightly. "I'm going to ask you to do something harder than that," came the low, quiet voice. "I'm going to ask you deliberately to experiment with me along those lines." It's getting weird. This book is getting weird.
"Yes, you can do it if I help you," the voice went on. She paused for a moment, then her hand pressed his shoulder. "My friend, what will you do if you don't go on? There will be nothing left for you." He knew she spoke the truth, and his head sank yet lower over his desk as he felt the resistance ebbing out of him. "Yes, we will see this thing through together, for good and not for evil. Do not be afraid of it. Believe me, it is not evil. Will you work with me, Rupert Malcolm?" For a long minute he sat motionless, then he nodded. "I felt you would," she said. Her hand shifted from his left shoulder to his right, and she drew him to her. Suddenly relaxing, he let his whole body go limp as he leant against her, feeling her brace herself to take his weight. But he didn't care. He let his full weight go on to her, the dead weight of the upper part of his body, limp and inert. Only a strong woman could have held him, and he liked that strength. More than anything else about her, more than her kindness, he liked that strength. And in him, shaken as he was, rose a strange joy like the morning stars singing together. For she had penetrated his daydream to its very core. She had martyred him, flailing him alive, and then she had been tender to him. Yet she was still an unconquerable fortress. He could never possess her. He did not want to possess her. Not in that way. It would spoil everything. Yet he was not unfulfilled, for he was possessed by her. He might not possess her, yet he was absorbed into her. His being was lost in hers, and he was utterly satisfied. This is very strange.
It's positively weird.
He turned his head slightly, and his face was in the folds of her cloak. Woo! She stood patiently supporting his heavy bulk, waiting for him to pass through his crisis and come back to self-control. The clock on the wall struck 8, and he raised his head.
Been there an hour.
She looked down at the face in the crook of her arm. All the lines had gone out of it, and he had the faintly bewildered look of a small child awaking from sleep in a strange place. All the tensions were gone, and there was a place of utter serenity and trust like a child's. The tears suddenly pricked behind her own eyes as she looked down into the face of that which 20 years of overstrain had suddenly been wiped away. Dr. Malcolm rose unsteadily to his feet. I suppose I should apologize," he said. The woman smiled. "I don't believe you have any intention of apologizing," she replied. "No," he said, "I haven't."
Might as well carry on.
And I looked up with a quick smile and down again, shy as a schoolgirl with her, but intently happy. "I'm going to drive you home," she said. "I have got my own car here." "Where do you live?" "Oh, no, don't bother. I'll get a taxi." He started to cram his instruments ruthlessly back into his already overcrowded dispatch case and forced the lid down on them. Something went crack inside, but he snapped the locks. Home regardless. Then, Forgetful of his refusal of her invitation, he followed her meekly to her smart black coupe standing outside the door. Oblivious of the indignant glances of Sister, who had been kept an hour over her time, and being an unsullied virginity herself, being of unsullied virginity self, did not approve of his driving home with this pretty lady.
Well, what can I say? That's the end of part 1. And it starts part 2, The Moon Mistress. Oh my golly gosh, it's nuts.
Oh, that dist with pitfall and with gin beset the road I was to wander in. Thou wilt not with pedestrination round amnesh me in impute my fall to sin.
Omar Khayyam.
I'm sorry, that was really awful.
Yes.
Perhaps I'll do better next time. I think we're only going to do that one chapter.
I think that was enough. I think my head hurts after that. That was like weird. It was just strange. So thank you for joining us, and a shout out to Wendy, Shana, Donna, and Carol.
Thank
and
you.
there's a couple of other people there who haven't chimed
you.
in, because I can tell by the numbers there's more than
I think
just
it's
you.
going to get a little better now.
I
Unless
hope so, because that was just plain
it's
bloody
strange
weird.
language and strangely dramatic, but we have to remember it's like 100 years
It's
old.
100 years old. It is 100 years old, and we ain't down with the kids 100 years old.
Well, not only that, the occult was occulted, right? She had to write weird leaps, so people just thought it was a novel.
But it's a difficult read, that first part.
Well, anything we've read by Dion Fortune has been a difficult read.
Well,
we read the Trainings and Work of an Initiate, and
that was extremely difficult.
And we tried to read Circuit of Force, and that was really difficult.
But
the novels are a bit easier.
The Sea Priestess wasn't terrible. I mean, that had got a good narrative
it started out
flow.
weird, but it kept going. Well, this is going to get better.
I hope so.
I'm sure it will.
Because
All right.
That chapter was weird. That was weird. And that was it. That was off the chart weird, I would say.
They're establishing that they can do this astral travel and appear to each other.
They appeared in each other's dreams, and I think she heard what he yelled out. Because she mentioned she had this auditory sensation, but mostly visual.
But it's written so weirdly, you have to kind of...
And she felt pressure on her shoulder and pressure on her chest.
And that's where
he put his head on her shoulder in his dream.
Right.
And on her chest and felt her heaving breast beneath.
So he's stressed out that she called him out and that she knows what he knows and all that good stuff. So it'll be okay. You just have to
we got to stay with it. We got to stay with it. And
we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week. Yes. Hopefully that was deeply meaningful. I don't know.
I fall over a lot of her words because they're like 42 letters long, and I'm unfamiliar with them.
She's guilty of risible use of pedantic sesquipedalians. I will say that much.
Right. Anyway,
that's it.
Off we go. Have a lovely night.
Yeah.
We'll see you soon.
We'll see you soon. Thanks for joining us. Have a beautiful evening. All right. Bye for now.